Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really personal story about a major health crisis. But more importantly, we're going to talk about the powerful new framework that it inspired, a whole new way to understand our own bodies. It's a story about survival, data, and finding a totally new language for healing.
So let's set the scene. It's January 2023. A severe stroke hits and someone is rushed into intensive care. Right away, the medical charts, the CT scans, all the clinical notes, they start to build a picture of what just happened. But, that's really only one side of it, right? What about the story the body itself is telling? The stuff that doesn't really show up on a scan? That's the big question that we're going to get into today.
Okay, so let's get right into the thick of it. We're starting with that crisis event in early 2023. And this wasn't just, a medical issue. This was a single moment that completely redefined everything. So on January 12th, a CT scan confirms it, a right thalamic hematoma. That's a really severe bleed in a supercritical part of the brain. And then, just 4 days later, on the 16th, the situation gets way worse. Neurological function just plummets. It's not until March, believe it or not, that the immediate life-threatening phase is finally considered over. Now, when things are this critical, doctors use a tool called the Glasgow Coma Scale, or GCS. It's basically a score, right? It helps them measure a person's level of consciousness and tells them just how severe the brain injury really is. The patient's GCS score was a 3. And I mean, that's the lowest possible score you can have. In the clinical notes, it's written as E1, V1, M1. What does that mean? It means a deep, totally unresponsive coma. It signifies that this person was, and there's no other way to put this, literally on the verge of death. So let's move on to what happens next, the aftermath. Because surviving something like that, well, that's just the very beginning of what becomes an incredibly long and complicated road back. You see, the stroke set off a whole cascade of other health problems: a partially dislocated shoulder, degenerative disc disease in the neck, and the beginning of this relentless nerve pain called central post-stroke pain. And if that wasn't enough, new diagnoses started popping up: type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, even signs of stress on the heart muscle. Recovery was definitely not a straight line. And this is really where the story takes a turn. Because while the clinical record was giving one set of data, the patient's own body was generating another kind entirely, a much more detailed, almost high-resolution story of what was really going on inside. This slide just illustrates that contrast perfectly. The medical chart says right thalamic hematoma, but the actual lived experience is a constant internal buzzing sensation. The X-ray shows C5/C6 disc degeneration, but the feeling is this painful chicken wing pulling. Lung congestion is the clinical term. Spicy night sweats is the raw data coming straight from the body. See the difference? And this realization led to a huge shift in mindset. What if these personal, subjective feelings weren't just complaints that you have to deal with? What if you started treating them as a legitimate, vital form of clinical data? This new way of thinking demanded a whole new way of talking with doctors and therapists. It was all about building a bridge to close that gap between what the patient was feeling and what the clinician could understand. Think about it. The old way might be to just say, "I feel unwell," but this new approach completely reframes things. Instead of vague symptoms, the patient starts presenting them as validated biosignals. That spicy sweat isn't just a weird feeling. It's a biosignal pointing to some intense metabolic activity happening during sleep. This totally changes the conversation from one of just complaining to one of collaborative investigation. So all of this thinking came together into this powerful new model for managing recovery. It's called the Survivor-Partner Framework. This framework is really built on 3 core pillars. First, you have to validate signals. Treat your body's unique language, that spicy sweat or internal pull, as real, legitimate data. Second, you redefine recovery. Success isn't just about being able to move again, it's about actively managing these really specific symptoms. And third, you become a co-developer. You're not just a patient anymore, you're an active partner with your doctors, working together to manage your body's complex biological operating system. It's an absolutely transformative journey. From a GCS score of 3, the barest marker of life, to becoming a co-developer in your own healing. It's a full-on shift from being a passive recipient of care to an active, essential partner in the whole process. And that leaves us with this final, kind of provocative thought. In a world full of scans, tests, and charts, What would change if our own personal, lived experiences were treated as the most valuable, most high-resolution data of all? Just think, what could that unlock for medicine and really for all of us?